Seiichi is a fat and ugly loser who gets bullied in school a lot. This comes to an end when his entire school is transported to a new game world. Here he gets a cheat skill to get overpowered and wins his own harem of sexy girls, before going on to dominate this world as a top G before that. Seiichi was just a normal high school student who found himself in a strange world with a thick sexy redhead in front of him. While blinded by this beauty, he suddenly remembers what had happened before he saw this beautiful and mysterious lady. As a usual practice for the ugly and fat Seiichi, his classmates bully him and insult him for being stupid and smelly. He sobs while receiving bad comments from them, and they are suddenly interrupted by the sound of the public address system. The voice tells them that they should all sit down while they listen to the announcements. Seiichi lays down on the floor as the voice reveals that the students are going to be teleported to another world. It also informs them that they have been granted the power to check their statuses. However, the voice adds that if they form groups, they would be teleported into a safe place, but the students become confused and immediately obey the voice as they begin to form groups. Seiichi the pig goes to meet some of his classmates to form a group, but they insult him and tell him that they do not want to be seen with him. The voice immediately tells the students to prepare for teleportation, and all of the students become teleported while leaving Seiichi alone. The voice becomes surprised on seeing the loser.
Me personally, I wouldn't take this level of disrespect.
And he immediately tells Seiichi that he would grant him a special skill before his teleportation. Seiichi with his fatso persona begins to wander in a forest and begins to cry as he becomes hungry after 5 days of starving the mysterious place. He sees a worm and decides to be the early bird, but as he tries to hit the worm, he is unable to reach the worm and he begins to cry for going through so much pain. Seiichi suddenly sees the fruit, and when he checks with his skills, he realizes that the fruit is called the fruit of evolution, but as he eats it, he becomes disappointed as the fruit tastes bad. Seiichi eats the fruits anyway, and he suddenly hears a voice telling him the effects of the fruit he had eaten. Seiichi begins to wonder who owns the voice, but he immediately realizes that the voice belongs to the system. Then he yells at the voice that nothing has happened to him, which means the fruit is good for him. Seiichi wanders off to look for food, and as he peeps into the forest, he sees a group of clever monkeys playing around a bunch of fruits of evolution. He becomes excited and decides to plan on how he would take the fruits in order to survive, but he immediately sees that the clever monkeys are gone, and he steals the fruits of evolution and some highest grade recovery potion. Meanwhile, the other students find themselves in a bougie-looking city where they all meet themselves, but some of Seiichi's friends asks each other if they have seen him. Then Kanazuki, who is a female friend, tells the rest that Seiichi has been teleported to another place in the strange world. Kenji, who is a male friend, tells the rest that he hopes Seiichi is okay and doing well on his own. On the other hand, the uncultured swine Seiichi sees a mushroom and begins to eat it, but he suddenly becomes paralyzed and the system immediately tells him that he has gained a skill of poison and paralysis resistance. Suddenly, one of the clever monkeys attacks Seiichi, and when he checks the status, he realizes that the monkey is at level 120, which is way more powerful than him. The clever monkey hits Seiichi, and he begins to bleed, but he immediately takes the recovery potion to save himself. Then he begins to yell as he gets defeated by the monkey. The monkey then tries to eat Seiichi, but the monkey gets killed by Seiichi's stench, and immediately the monkey disappears and turns to a lot of gifts and abilities for Seiichi. He checks the skills out, and he also finds a book on the clever monkey's knowledge. The system notifies Seiichi that he has to begin his evolution, and he immediately begins to cry out in pains as his body parts begins to reduce in size. And when he checks his body, he sees how thin he is, but when he checks his stats, he notices that he has only undergone 1 out of 10 levels of the evolution.
My disappointment is immeasurable, and my day is ruined.
Seiichi becomes angry as his level has not changed since he defeated the clever monkey. 5 months later, Seiichi uses his knowledge of the clever monkeys to create his stats and survive in the forest, but his joy becomes cut short when he sees that he is being attacked by a level 311 Necrowolf. Seiichi uses his skills to knock the wolf out, and he praises himself for being too strong for a level 1 hero. He also gathers the gifts and skills from the Acrowolf, and he acquires a water spirit dagger. He gets the Acrowolf knowledge book, and he goes through the 9th stage of the evolution while screaming like a 9-year-old girl. After the evolution, he notices he has 1 more evolution, then he wonders what would happen to him if he finishes his evolution. Seiichi questions his life choices when he sees that he is being surrounded by clever monkeys, But as he tries to run, he is stopped by a huge Kaiser Kong who tells him that he should fight with it. Seiichi wonders how the monkey can talk, but he realizes that he has greater issues. Then he begins to fight with the monkey, and as he is able to dodge the monkey's first attack, the monkey becomes shocked as it tells Seiichi that she is a female Kong named Saria. Seiichi begins to feel weird about Saria's revelation, but he continues to fight with her while she becomes more interested in him for being strong as he is able to dodge her attacks. After using her most powerful skill, Saria becomes more deeply rooted in love as she sees that Seiichi dodged her attack without getting hurt. Seiichi decides to use his stench to drive Saria away, but he becomes shocked as she is not affected by his stench, and instead she tells him she loves him, and immediately carries him away, while telling him that she wants to marry him. Saria prepares a nice meal for Seiichi, and he tries to refuse at first, but when his stomach says otherwise, he eats the food and realizes how nice it tastes, but while eating, Saria gives him a new set of clothes and Seiichi feels awkward as a gorilla is trying to act like a decent girl. Seiichi asks Saria how she learned how to speak and Saria shows him some books she had seen in an abandoned cave, but as Seiichi takes the books, the system tells him that he has acquired the knowledge from the book. After a while, Saria and Seiichi go to look for food, and while Seiichi plans a jailbreak, he tiptoes to escape, but he suddenly sees a huge spider, and before he is able to do anything, punches the spider, and the spider goes flying away. Saria checks if Seiichi is okay, and Seiichi immediately realizes that Saria is genuinely worried about him. But back at the cave, Saria tells Seiichi about the fruits of evolution as she also asks him if he knows about it, but he denies it. Seiichi is unable to lie further, and he immediately confesses that he was the one that stole the fruits from the clever monkeys. Saria tells him that he is forgiven as she had planned to give the fruits to her future husband. Then she asks him if he hates her, but he tells her that he does not hate her, and she would become a very good bride if she marries a gorilla.
Oh my God! Wow!
Saria takes this seriously, and she begins to imagine an Alabama wedding, and even the souls from heaven knows that there is something wrong with this. The other students begin to complain to Zakia, who is in charge of their training, and they tell him that they want to fight real battles instead of playing with the sticks given to them. Zakia tells the students that they have to train with the wooden swords so as to get accustomed to wielding the real swords. Then Seiichi's friends all decide to go and train on their own so as to improve their skills. Meanwhile, Seiichi decides to make a run for his life so as to stay away from Saria, but as he is running, Saria immediately runs after him as she yells at him not to run towards the forest because of something dangerous there, but Seiichi refuses to listen to her, and he continues to run until he is unable to see her again. Seiichi suddenly sees a cave, and when he enters, he finds a room that smells like death, and he sees a skeleton figure of a man who immediately tells him that he does not expect to see a human visiting him. The man stands up and he tells Seiichi that he thinks he is not an ordinary human, but Seiichi becomes scared, and he immediately tries to look at the man to know his name and level. He sees that the man's name is the Dark Lord Xenos, and he is at level 1 like him, but when he becomes relaxed, that he would defeat him. Xenos tells him that he should look again, and when he checks again, he realizes that he is doomed to be barbecued, as the real level is 1500. Xenos immediately attacks Seiichi, and Seiichi immediately says his last prayers as Xenos tries to stab Seiichi. Saria immediately blocks it, and she gets stabbed instead. Seiichi immediately goes to meet her to ask her why she risked her life for him, and she replies that she loves him, and he is also kind to her, as he had never shown fear and also interacted with her normally. She also adds that she had died after their brawl, and she was always only able to live after because of her Kaiser Kong special skills. Seiichi becomes angry, and he immediately brings out his weapons to fight with Xenos, who tells him that their love is ridiculous. Seiichi, who is in tears, attacks Xenos, who in turn dodges all of his attacks. Then Seiichi confessed that he loves Saria, and he immediately uses a special movement to defeat Xenos after telling him that he has to respond to Saria's feelings because they have not gone through their final evolution together. Xenos is unable to believe that he has been defeated, and he immediately thanks Seiichi for showing and reminding him what true love looked like, as he would be able to join his lover after his death. Xenos disappears into thin air, and Seiichi goes to meet Saria and kisses her. Then she immediately begins to glow, and the light becomes too much for Seiichi as he moves away from Saria. Suddenly, Seiichi sees a naked female in front of him.
Did you pray today?
And he immediately becomes shocked as he sees her rice cakes with her huge melons. The lady immediately runs to meet Saichi, and she asks him if he does not recognize her. But before he could say anything, she tells him that she is Saria, and she begins to press her huge melons against his body. Saichi and the naked Saria sees a book containing the story of Sinos and his lover Marie, and when they finish reading the book, Saria begins to cry as she feels emotional about the twist in the two lovers' story. Saichi finds some clothes and he gives Saria in order to cover herself, and when he tries to show her a necklace, he looks at her and gawks at her like a perverted idiot. The system tells Saichi that he has gained the ability to perform dark magic, and that he would go through his final evolution, and at that moment Saichi knew he f***ed up. After his final revolution, Saichi shows off his bets like charm, and Saria becomes stricken at the handsome demigod in front of her. Saichi then tells Saria that he wants to leave the forest to go and find his schoolmates, then she immediately tells him that she would follow him to anywhere his destination is. The two suddenly hear a fanfare playing, and a short talking sheep jumps in front of them to tell them that he is in charge of the entire dungeon, and after introducing himself as Sheep, Sheep tells Saichi of how he had been watching and laughing at him going through his final stage of evolution. Mr. Sheep tells them that he has come to give them the gifts they earned for clearing the dungeon, and he immediately gives them a new set of fruits of evolution, and he also changes Saria's dress into a more beautiful one which reveals her giant cannons, while he gives Saichi a full-face helmet which has a special ability of opening up the mouth part for him to eat. Sheep tells the two that they should prepare as he would teleport them out of the dungeon, but Saichi yells at the short sheep that he would have his revenge once they meet again. On their way to the city, Saria tells Saichi that she is excited, and Saichi tells himself that he would begin a new adventure with Saria, and because she is with him, he would be able to overcome any problem that comes his way. On their way to the nearest town, Saichi tells Saria that they would have to go to an adventurers guild in order to register their names, but he sees it as an opportunity to meet up with his friends. The two suddenly see a little slime on their way, and as Saichi defeats the slime, he begins to think of himself as an ugly monster with so much power, but the slime turns into a pair of boots and 2 more skills. He gives Saria the boots, and she feels beautiful after eating the boots, but as Saichi takes the skills, the helmet gets off his head and turns into a common robe and a letter. He reads the letter and realizes that it was all because of the sheep they met at the dungeon. After a few hours of walking, they eventually get to the capital Telbert, and before they are able to enter, a guard named Claude asks the two to present a means of identification, and when they are unable to do so, Claude tells them that they should use the Gem of Truth. After confirming their intention, Claude advises them to get a means of identification, and when Saichi tells him that they would register with the guild, he advises them against it as it would not be okay for them. After exchanging pleasantries, Saichi and Saria enters the city, and when they reach the guild, Saichi sees that the place is looking normal, but when he opens the door, he realizes that the place is filled with creeps, and when Saria tries to look, he protects her from looking as he tells her that it would not be okay for her. He decides that they would leave, but before they are able to do so, they suddenly meet the guild master named Gusel Clute, who is the head of the creeps. He looks like someone who had been forgotten at the gym as he is obsessed with his muscles, and he forces Saichi and Saria in so that they would register with the guild. On getting inside, the receptionist named Erin tortures a fatso, but on seeing the two, she immediately changes into a decent and well-behaved person as she asks Saichi what his reasons are for registering with the guild. Saria becomes excited, and she tries to convince Saichi to register them there as she sees the other adventurers having fun, and Saichi immediately agrees to register them there. Suddenly some gangs called the Mohawks try to take Saichi, their boss, to defile them. But as he gets there and he sees that the boss is trying to make him suck on his sausage, Saichi runs for his life. He gets back to the guild and Erin tells him that they would have to take a few tests, and the test is meant to be taken by a level adventurer. A beautiful lady comes in, and she is introduced as Artoria the Calamity, but Saichi becomes excited as he gets lost looking at Artoria's melons. Saria calls Saichi to order, and they begin their journey to go for the 3 tests, which includes demolishing a building, helping an orphanage, and walking a dog. Saria decides to help at the orphanage, while Saichi follows Artoria Telford the remaining 2 tests. On their way, Artoria helps a boy who was injured, and when a bunch of iron rods try to fall on them, she saves herself and the little boy with her defense magic. On getting to the building that is to be demolished, Saichi goes to check the place out, and when he touches a part of the building collapses and Artoria becomes sad as she thinks Saichi is in danger. She begins to recount how everyone close to her has gotten hurt, which gives her the name Artoria Olath Calamity. Seiichi gets out of the dust and he sees Artoria crying, but she immediately yells at him for putting himself in danger, and the next minute she apologizes to him and tells him that they have to go for the next test. Then Seiichi begins to wonder how nice Artoria is. Meanwhile, the students still continue their training on becoming a hero, but Zakia tells another warrior named Orv that he wants to defeat the Demon Lord himself, as he does not want any of the students to lose their lives while fighting for a battle that is not theirs. On getting to the last quest, Seiichi realizes that the dog he is meant to walk is not exactly a dog, but a huge wolf-like beast, and as the beast named Milk chases Seiichi around the compound, the owner and Artoria stays and watches Seiichi screaming for his life. The owner of the beast compliments Artoria for smiling more, and she asks her if it is because of Seiichi, and Artoria immediately calls Cap, and she denies it while blushing. Back at the guild, Gussel presents the reward for the tests as he brings it out from his underwear, but when Eren asks Seiichi and Saria if they have an inn, they reply to her to tell her that they would camp outside. On hearing this, Artoria immediately suggests that the two come to stay in her inn, but this gesture surprises Eren and Gussel, as they know how hard Artoria can be. The guild prepares Seiichi and Saria for their first test, and Artoria tells them to look for medicinal herbs, but before giving the full instructions, Seiichi and Saria become excited as they both run off to look for the herb. Few minutes later, Saria shows Artoria what she has gotten, and after being praised, the two ladies see Seiichi running towards them with excitement. But when he shows Artoria his herbs, they see that he is unable to get the herbs, but he is only able to get some rare mushrooms. Seiichi becomes sad, and when Artoria tells him to look harder, he runs off to the forest to look for more hens, but he suddenly hears some men talking about a teleportation plan, but as stupid as he is, Seiichi decides to ask the men about the herbs. He asks the men who turn out to be demons, who are also scared of their master called Leah. Then the three idiots ask each other to know if Seiichi heard their plans, but they all decide to kill them. The leader of the idiots immediately summons a huge troll to kill Seiichi, and as the troll hits his baton on Seiichi, the three idiots think he is dead until they suddenly see that he is using a kind of magical power to hold on to the baton and eventually breaks it. The demons see how powerful Seiichi is, and they've all run away, leaving Seiichi clueless, as he only wanted to ask them about the herbs. Seiichi goes back to meet Artoria and Saria to show them the rare plants he got, and when Artoria sees how sad he is, she gives him some herbs and tells him to turn it in at the guild. Meanwhile, the three demons goes to meet their master Leah, who asks them why they went to put traps on the field, but when they explain to her that the traps are leading to the greatest member of the Demon Lord's army dungeon, she tells them that they have done a good job, but they are going to be punished for not following her instructions. She gives them 500 lashes each, and she tells them that it is supposed to teach them a lesson not to disobey her again. The following day, while on their way to do their final test, Saria and Seiichi see Claude, who asks them if Artoria is their test proctor. Then Claude tells the two that Artoria is a kind person, and they should try to make her happy if they could. On the field for their final test, Artoria explains to the two that they have to defeat some slimes in order to clear their test, but when the slimes begins to show up, Seiichi tries to kill one of it, but before he could, the slime suddenly teleports and Artoria pauses the test and tells them that they would have to go back as the field is full of teleportation traps. Artoria tries to walk away, but she mistakenly steps on one of the traps, and before she teleports, Seiichi and Saria hold her hand, and they all teleport into a maze-like dungeon together. After appearing in the dungeon, Artoria scolds Seiichi and Saria for risking their lives, but they tell her that they did not want her to go alone. Artoria then gives Seiichi a guide stone, and she explains that it is used to locate one's party members anytime they get lost. Then she also adds that if the stone turns red, it means the life of the other member is in danger. Artoria decides that they should check the dungeon out, and she mistakenly steps a brick, which immediately reveals a huge brick wall between herself and Seiichi with Saria. Seiichi becomes shocked, and he tries to find a way to get back with Artoria, but all the patches are a dead end. Then Saria reminds him of the guide stone, and when they try to use it, the stone became their most possible way out, but the stone points towards the brick dividing them, and Seiichi feels stupid for it. Saria finds a room with a chest in it, and when she calls Seiichi to check, they find a talking treasure chest, but as the chest grows out arms and legs, Seiichi uses his magical water binding ability, and he is able to level up and gain some skills by defeating the chest. They also learn about the story behind the treasure chest, but they get distracted as Saria feels a huge tingling sensation on her melons.
Wait a minute!
When she brings out the guide stone from her melons, she shows Seiichi, and they see that the stone has turned red. On the other hand, Artoria sees a huge door, and she decides to enter it without a tangible reason, but on getting inside, she is faced with a huge monster named the Black Dragon God, and she decides to defeat the monster, but the monster tells her that she has a death wish. Leah tells her minions about the Black Dragon God and how dangerous he is because he is the strongest member of the Demon Lord's army. Seiichi and Saria begin to wonder what they can do to go and save Artoria. However, Artoria decides to use her strongest ability against the monster. She uses her Calamity ability but while trying to defeat the monster so that she would try to find Seiichi and Saria. The monster stabs her, and she falls down feeling disappointed in herself for not talking Seiichi and Saria home. She waits for her death as the Black Dragon God tells her that he would finish her off with his fire breath. Artoria suddenly wakes up as she faintly hears her name, but when she opens her eyes, she sees Seiichi and Saria as Seiichi uses his robe to block the fire breath from hitting them. Seiichi smiles at Artoria, and he tells her that they have come to rescue her like she does not already know that. Artoria suddenly asks the two how they are able to find her, and Seiichi explains to her, after knocking out the Black Dragon God for a bit, that they had to break the walls before getting to her. Seiichi notices that the Black Dragon Lord is getting conscious, and he instructs Saria to take Artoria to a safe place as he gives her a recovery potion to take her away from danger. Seiichi immediately faces the Black Dragon God, and they begin to fight, but Seiichi is unable to get through the monster's skin. The monster uses a kind of magic on Seiichi, and with some skills, Seiichi is able to break through the spell, and he uses a new skill he unlocked while fighting to defeat the Black Dragon God. After defeating the monster, Seiichi becomes tired, and Saria immediately goes to meet him, and as she sees that he is not hurt, she tells him how Artoria's health is. As usual, Seiichi gains more skills from defeating the Black Dragon God, and he also gets a copy of the dragon's biography where he learns how humankind betrayed the dragon. After reading the book, Seiichi begins to cry and he feels bad for killing the dragon.
We don't do that here.
That tries to kill him and his friends first. Saria becomes worried about how they would go back home, and as she runs around like a mad fellow, Seiichi calms her down and tells her that he would get them home safely. Before they teleport home, Seiichi levels up again, and he gets a new robe that is more stronger and advanced than the one he had before, but he also receives a letter from Mr. Sheep, who tells him his new skills and rewards from clearing the dungeon. Mr. Sheep also adds that he has gone on a vacation, and he would advise that Seiichi does not clear any dungeon before his arrival. Seiichi gets them to teleport back home after he has eaten the Black Dragon God's gem to possess all of his powers, but on their way home, Artoria wakes up, and she realizes that Seiichi has been carrying her all along. She feels weak, but Saria explains to her that she is unable to walk yet as she is just recovering. On getting to the guild, Aaron and Gussel throw a party as they have been worried about the three adventurers, but all this makes Artoria feel bad, as she had thought she was bringing misfortune to everyone around her. Artoria becomes overwhelmed, and she immediately runs off, but Saria tells Seiichi to follow her and bring her back to the guild, because she is not feeling too well. Meanwhile, Leah tells her demon servants that the Black Dragon God has been killed and they need to be on alert, because there is a demon slayer out who might tend to look for them as well. Seiichi runs to find Artoria, but he runs into Adriana, who was the owner of the beast he had walked during his first test at the guild, and she tells him that he should stay close to Artoria, because of what she has been going through. Seiichi thanks Adriana, and he leaves, but he uses the guide stone to find Artoria, and he sees her in the demolished building where he had his first test with her. He goes to meet her, and she asks him if the people at the guild really love her. As she had been thinking, they are all in danger because of her curse of having bad luck up to 2 million times more. Seiichi suddenly hugs Artoria, and he tells her sweet words in order to make her feel better, but Artoria becomes shocked as he is able to make such a bold move towards her. Saria waits at the guild as she wonders why Seiichi is taking so long to come back. However, Seiichi hugs Artoria, and he tries to convince himself that he is only being supportive, but he gets carried away by her warm body and beautiful smell.
Ladies and gentlemen, we got him.
While fighting in his head, Artoria becomes uncomfortable, and he immediately takes his hands off her, but after thinking on how to help Artoria, Seiichi suddenly thinks that Artoria would be happy if he does something about her bad luck. Seiichi suddenly becomes a superhero as he remembers that he had taken a ring from the treasure chest in the dungeon, and the ring is supposed to change all of Artoria's bad luck to good luck. Seiichi puts the ring in her finger, and he promises to stay by her side always till she is able to be on her own. But on hearing this, Artoria suddenly stands up and runs away. Seiichi wonders what he has done wrong again, and it suddenly hits him that he had proposed to her indirectly. But as he runs to correct himself, he stops and smiles like an idiot to decide to leave it that way if it would make her happy. On the other hand, Artoria runs to a corner and she looks at the ring, but she begins to wonder why her heart is beating a little bit faster. Seiichi and Saria sit to have breakfast, but he is unable to eat, and he explains to her that he does not feel okay about what had happened between him and Artoria the previous day. He also adds that he notices that Artoria is avoiding him as he gets a flashback of how she ran away after seeing him earlier that day. Seiichi calms down and he asks Saria what she wants to do that day, and she tells him that she is going to the orphanage, while he tells her that he wants to get some information about the new world, so as to know more about his friends and classmates. Seiichi goes to meet Gussel, and he asks him about the information he is looking for, and Gussel gives him a magazine of his annoying muscles, while flaunting them in his face. Seiichi did not expect much, and when he sees Eris, he asks her the same question, but she gives him magazines containing some perverted contents. Gussel tells Seiichi that they were joking with him, and he also adds that he would get the information he wants from the Royal Library. Then Gussel immediately pulls out a map from his sausage pocket and gives it to Seiichi, who gets disgusted. The king who summoned the heroes has a discussion with his sorcerer, who advises that the students are given real monsters to fight with before the huge fight with the Demon Lord. The king agrees, but the sorcerer also suggests that the students be taken to Barbator Magic Academy, where they would be able to learn more in order to prepare them for the battle. The sorcerer also adds that the students should be given enslavement bracelets, so that they would be able to obey any instruction given to them without complaints. Then the king agrees to this, while the two laugh at their brilliant ideas. Artoria runs off to the city as she begins to wonder what is wrong with her heart as it is beating fast, while she remembers Seiichi's face. Seiichi goes to the library, and as he sees that he is unable to get more information on what he is looking for, he decides to learn more about magic, but he notices that as he flips the pages, the system tells him that he has acquired a new type of magic. Seiichi flips the pages of the books, and he gets a lot of magical skills, including magical creation.
Oh my god! Wow!
And this makes Seiichi yell out loud as he misses his normal like of being a fat loser. After reading at the library, Seiichi decides to head back to the inn. But on his way, he plans on how to devote more time into looking for his friends, but while thinking, his stomach begins to make some unpleasant sounds to signify that he is hungry. He eats a painting from a little girl in the market and puts it in his item box, but he gets distracted by a lovely smell and decides to trace the smell to a cafe. On getting to the cafe, Seiichi orders food, and after eating, he sits with the owner of the cafe named Node and another man in the cafe called Ranz. On the other hand, Artoria is unable to point out what she is feeling like until she sees Adriana, who offers to help her by discussing what she is feeling like. Adriana points out to Artoria that she is in love with Seiichi, even though she knows he has Saria, and the ring on her left hand is a proof of their eternal love. But seeing this, Artoria agrees, and she becomes determined to tell Seiichi how she feels about him, but Adriana tells her that she is an expert in that field. Seiichi tells Ranz and Noad what his predicament is with Artoria, and they advise him not to tell her it's a mistake, and he has to accept the two ladies by showing his love to them, both without masking one side, obviously larger than the other. Seiichi takes the advice, and when he goes to pick Saria, he stands in front of the door to the orphanage and tries to think about what he would do about the two beautiful ladies with him, but he suddenly sees Artoria, who approaches him and kisses him without allowing him to say a word. Seiichi then feels like a prince when Artoria confessed her love to him, and she tells him that she knows he had made a mistake, but she pleads with him to consider her and take her by his side. Seiichi becomes troubled as he does not know what Saria would say about it. Then Saria meets the two in a very close position, and when Seiichi thinks that he is a dead meat, Saria begins to beg him to accept Artoria so that they can all live together in peace. Seiichi accepts the two women into his life, and they all reveal their love to their friends and close ones, while they all congratulated them, thereby making Seiichi a lucky man in a new world.